Maybe the judge believes arguments from both sides, but they can still view ours as more important.
This final step is called impacting. It's especially important when your side has a big harm or benefit that the other side will find really difficult to dispute.
If you want to permit performance-enhancing drugs in sport, you want the judge to feel like making sport as entertaining as possible is the most important thing in the debate.
But if you're against those drugs, you probably want the judge to care more about, say, athlete health instead.
If you are against taxes on labor-saving technology, you want the judge to feel like innovation is the most important thing in the debate.
If you support those taxes, you would want the judge to care more about workers who face unemployment. So, what can you say? Why might your benefit be more important than their harm?
It might affect more people, or given uncertainty, it might be more likely to affect people.
It might affect people more intensely or over a longer time, or it might particularly affect people who are more vulnerable.
For example, if our harm has to do with how parental licenses will discourage people from having children, why should we care about the fertility rate anyway?
Fewer babies means fewer human lives in the world, and all the lost potential for happiness that goes with them. If Australia had the same fertility rate in 2019 as it did in 2008, over 300,000 extra young people would exist today. If the United States had the same fertility rate in 2019 as it did in 2008, over 5.8 million extra young people would exist.
It represents lost parent happiness too. Surveys show that adults want more children, but they delay due to lack of childcare, child-unfriendly workplaces, family obligations, and other challenges.
It also leaves an overall older population with dire consequences for tax bases, inequality, justice, healthcare, loneliness, economic growth, innovation, political stability, even military recruitment, you name it.
The point here is not to exaggerate. It is not to suggest that parenting licenses would be solely responsible for these impacts. It is not necessarily even to claim that parenting licenses are purely a matter of population. What these impacts do show is that there is a real, complex, and morally weighty problem about population. And on this score, parenting licenses push in the wrong direction. They would make things worse rather than better.
Try coming up with impacts for another one of our earlier arguments. For instance, that we should subsidize art to attract more artists or stimulate different kinds of art. We could impact this by saying that art promotes belonging, storytelling, cohesion, history, and progress.
Opposing art subsidies to avoid stifling art or crowding out other funding sources, you could say art should be challenging, confronting, countercultural, and questioning of authority.
For the argument that we should allow performance-enhancing drugs in sports to maximize entertainment, we could impact this by saying that a bigger audience for sport means more community building and more grassroots participation with massive long-term benefits for the health of the whole population.
For keeping PEDs banned to protect athletes of all ages from the pressure to use them, you could say sport will consist only of athletes with disastrous long-term health effects from the use of performance-enhancing drugs.
For taxing labor-saving technology to protect vulnerable workers, we can impact this by saying that unqualified workers nearing retirement age who can't retrain and can't put food on the table for their families are at high risk of despair, depression, and drug abuse, as seen in the opioid epidemic sweeping the United States.
And for opposing the tax to promote innovation, you could say innovation is how we got iPhones, antibiotics, insurance, and a vaccine for COVID-19 in under a year. It's also how we will get clean energy, cars that don't crash, and a cure for cancer, or for COVID-30 when it happens.
Ultimately, the skill of making a strong argument involves both explaining how something happens and making the listener care about it.
In these videos, we have learned to brainstorm harms and benefits by asking who will be affected by the topic, support our claims with context and mechanisms, and show the importance of our arguments with impacting.
If this has been helpful for you, please like and subscribe. Leave your questions and comments below, and thanks for watching.